Heya, Pixel Peeps. Let's say you've made something super cool with Perler Beads and you want to show it off to the world, but you don't want to turn it into a magnet, put it in a frame, or turn it into a keychain. We can kick up the presentation a notch and make a display box. Today, I'm going to show you how I turned a box I got for free into a display box for my Mini Perler Bead Pokemon gym badges from Pokemon Red and Blue's Kanto region. I'll also tell you how you can get your own free box to make your own display boxes. Let's go. With this project, you can display anything you've made, but for today, we're going to focus on Mini Perler Beads. This is assuming you have already made your Mini Perler Bead creations. If you want to see me making these Pokemon Perler Bead gym badges in action, you can check out the live streams of us making it with the Pixel Peeps or this YouTube short that showcases how to get that perfect flat melt for Mini Perler Beads. Because we're displaying Pokemon gym badges, I wanted to make this display box mimic the design of a Pokeball, so that meant red on top, white on the bottom, and some black in the middle. Let's check what materials you're going to need for this project. To make this display box, you will need the following. A box, I'll tell you the details on how to get it for free after this. Paint, a paintbrush or two, painter's tape, water to clean your paintbrush, a glue gun, we use the low temperature one in this instance, fabric, we use velvet but you can use whatever you want, cardboard to support and prop up your Perler creations and to prepare your workspace, and finally, paper towels to clean up any mess that you make. An alternative to the cardboard would be styrofoam, but since I didn't use it in this project, I have no footage of it. So here's how I got my free wooden display box. For some context, I live in the States. I went to a local cigar shop / lounge. I went to the counter and asked for any empty cigar boxes. Some stores will give it to you for free. It's really that simple, but I had an awkward experience where I had trouble opening the door and I stammered nervously with the guy behind the counter, but he was nice enough. Just be prepared to air out your boxes and any clothes you're wearing if you don't want to smell like smoke. Check with your local laws because you will need to be, in some places, 21 years or older to enter one of these spots. If you aren't of age, please ask your parent guardian to go in and grab a few boxes for you. If you're unable to go or feel uncomfortable to go to one of these places to grab a box for free, I'm sure you can find similar boxes at your local craft store. Don't forget to bring your coupons. So let's get into how to make a Perler Bead display box. Step 0. Plan your final design. What colors will you be using? What do you want your finished product to look like? Once you have an idea in your head, you're ready to start. It's also okay to call an audible and make adjustments on the fly, so do whatever is going to be easier for you. For me, I had somewhat of an idea for a final product, but I definitely made some on-the-spot judgment calls on which direction I was going to go in. Step 1. Set out all of your materials. Lay out some cardboard where you'll be painting to protect the surface you're working on. Step 2. Use painter's tape to tape off the top half of the box. This will help reduce any mess made and paint splotches where they're not supposed to be. Step 3. Paint the bottom half. For paints, I use this acrylic stuff I had in my basement. Please feel free to yell at me in the comments about how I was supposed to sand the box first or use a specific type of paint or paintbrush, because I honestly had no idea what I was doing. I just used what I had and hoped for the best. I would love to learn more for next time though. Like Drake, I started from the bottom, now we're here. I slapped on a bunch of white paint on the underside and the sides of the bottom half of the box. I wanted a nice thick first coat, so I used a lot of paint here. If that isn't the best strategy, again, feel free to let me know. If possible, unscrew the latches and hinges so you don't get paint on them. If you can't, like I couldn't here with this box, you can try to paint around them, but later I decided to YOLO it and paint it now and scrape the paint off later. Maybe I should have let the bottom super dry, but I added a second layer pretty soon after. I remember from my elementary school art class that I should paint in one direction, and I remembered from my high school woodshop class that I should go with the grain, unless I remembered all of that wrong. Whoops. I then added a second layer to the sides. Afterwards, I set the box aside to dry. Step 4. Remove the painter's tape and wait for the paint to dry. This process took me a whole lot longer than I thought it would. It's probably because of my meaty sausage fingers, but hey, what are you gonna do? Step 5/1. Prepare the inside. At this point, I started thinking about how I was going to get my badges propped up. In retrospect, maybe I should have started working on the functionality before I worked on the painting. It's up to you to decide what you'll want to do, but I recommend fiddling with that part of the box first before painting anything. However, for better or for worse, this is how I did things with my ADHD brain. That's not to say it was the best way to go about it though. My idea was to cover a cardboard piece with velvet that fit the bottom of the box. Before I glued that, I used other pieces of cardboard to prop up the badges. I just manually manually bent them until they kept the shape I needed. I cut out little slits in the cardboard to hopefully let the badges slide into place, but it didn't pan out how I wanted. Another way to have done this bit without cardboard would be to use styrofoam and cut out an imprint for whatever it is you'll be displaying. You could also theoretically add a ceiling to your box in the same way, but you definitely have to accommodate for enough space for your box to close without smushing the contents. I glued the new bent pieces of cardboard to the flat bottom piece of cardboard. Before I glued the velvet, I made sure the cardboard was covered enough to leave some slack around the edges. I used a low temp glue gun for all of this. As you can see, it was very much eyeballed and fiddled with until I thought it looked okay. To my surprise, it all held together okay after our first try. Make sure you test the box by closing it to see that your Perler Bead creations aren't getting in the way of the box closing. You could also decide to glue your creations to the display fabric, but I wanted to be able to take the badges out of the box whenever I wanted, so I decided to not glue them. Step 6. Paint the rest of the box. I taped these little wooden pieces that propped up, and then realized that they slid right out. I decided to not paint these pieces to somehow keep a bit of the original wood in the final version of our box. I would have loved to have kept the inside of the box all natural wood, but the design was a little distracting to say the least. I tried sanding it a little bit, but decided to just paint over it in the end. This might have been overkill since the cardboard is going to cover the bottom, but I decided to paint the entire bottom for good measure. The main goal of painting the inside black was mostly for the inside walls here, but again, I wanted to cover up the box's design. I waited for the paint to dry before adding extra layers. I was pleasantly surprised that the paint covered up the logo inside. For the top part, after I'd placed my painter's tape, I painted it red, but something weird happened. I'm not sure if it's because the top had some sort of varnish or some sort of wood finish, or maybe I had mixed the red paint with a bit of water, but the paint initially came out looking really wet. I panicked a bit because the logo on the top was still very visible, but I just slapped more and more layers of red on it until I was happy with it. I had this urge to try to fill out the top black space of the inside of the box with my Kanto Pokemon team from when I played Pokémon Red in 1999 and maybe glue them there. Ultimately, the 6 Pokemon were too big and ate up too much space. I also considered turning the trainer sprite into a Perler Bead creation and making a parallel to the congratulations screen that you see once you become, spoiler alert for a game that came out over 20 years ago, the Pokemon champion at the end of Pokemon Red and Blue, but nothing came of that idea either. Step 7. Scrape off excess paint off of the hinges. Once your paint is dry, you can scrape off any extra paint that you may have splattered on your hinges if you couldn't unscrew it and remove them like it was in this case. I used a Swiss Army knife and scraped away to put on those finishing touches. I didn't go too overboard with the back, but I did try to clean up the front as best as I could. Step 8. Pat yourself on the back for all of your hard work. And that's it. Now you can display your creations in yet another creation. If you learned something new or just enjoyed the video, please share this video with someone else who might enjoy it. It helps us out a ton. If you want to learn how to make a different type of display, check out this video on how to frame your Perler Bead creations by clicking up here. Until next time, peace out.